Hey everybody, I'm Matt from the Creator team, and today I want to do a deep dive into our custom code support. We're going to walk through making a fully dynamic to-do list backed by Firebase. First, we're going to set up our app with a unique theme using our custom theme support. Then we're going to mock up the design and layout. Then we can make our to-do list function with a list-backed Angular service. Finally, we're going to utilize route parameters to view item details and link up that list-based service directly to Firebase. Feel free to follow along with me as we dive in. All right, so let's get started with phase one. First, you're just going to want to start out in your dashboard and you're going to want to create a new tabs project. We are going to name this our to-do project. We're going to create that and wait for this thing to bootstrap. Now, I know we kind of released a theming feature and we haven't really talked about that a whole lot, so I did want to just do some minor tweaks to the theme for our project here, just to give it a little bit more of a custom feel. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the top right here and open up our theming in SCSS, and I'm going to change our header background color to royal. Now, if I wanted to change what color this royal was, I could also go over to theme colors and literally change the definition of royal to a different hex color. You also have the option here to put in any custom SCSS that we will compile for you and include with your app. So we're just going to save our changes here, close, and we can see that our header is now this nice purple color. We're going to do the same thing to our tabs controller. We are going to select on the left-hand side all three tabs, and we are going to change that theme color to royal as well. So now when we go here and we preview, you can see we have our app is a nice purple color now. Now we want to start kind of rigging this app together, so let's do the first thing here and get rid of this third tab. We're not going to need it. We also are not going to need the corresponding page for that tab. So here we are just going to name this to-dos in the routing URL up top. That just helps with our export function. And we're going to change the title to to-dos. Now our other page is where we're going to want to store our finished items. So let's just name that finished. And we can have this finished items. And then we can go down here and make these tabs actually make sense. So let's go here, call this one to-dos. Here, let's search for list. And we'll just do an iOS list outline, something that makes sense. And then over here, let's do finished items. And for that, let's look up some kind of check mark. Let's do this one. All right, so that was kind of easy. We were just getting our things set up here with the to-dos, the finished items. This is your standard tabs project. Now what we want to do here is we are actually going to have a list item. So let's just drag over. Let's do an icon list item to this to-dos page. Okay, and let's change this left icon to, let's look for check mark again, but let's use this outline blank one. These are unchecked items, okay? Now let's do some small other formatting stuff. Let's do this one. We can go to the list over here on the left, change this list to be full width. So what that does is even though our page has padding, the list is going to go the full width, right? Then we're going to select the page. You can do that just by clicking the background. And we're going to disable the header margin. What that does is move this item all the way to the top. So now when you preview, you see we have a nice full width list item here. Okay, now that's all fine and dandy. We click this. It doesn't really do anything. It's not backed by any data. So now let's dive into a little bit of the code feature. Let's open up this code panel. You can do that by clicking on the bar at the bottom of your page. And you're immediately greeted with different controllers for your page. Now, for those of you that know Ionic or know Angular, this might look a little weird to you because all we're giving you is a function. We'll handle everything else for you. Okay, we will make sure that this gets put into a file for you, that it's wrapped in .controller, all that fun stuff. But just for lack of making everything function correctly for you, we give you access to a function. Now, this function already imports scope and state params. You can import anything else you'd like in this function. You have full control over that, and we'll make sure that everything gets injected properly. So in here, let's, to start having some fun, just do scope.items equals a list of items here. And we can let's do title, testing item 1. And let's make a finished state variable, set that to false. And then we will copy this, make another one, and set finish to true, change it to testing item 2. Do that, and then we will save our changes to the code. It's important to remember to save your changes. Okay, so basically we have an item on scope now that we have access to. So for each of these items, it's a list with 2 different objects in it that we now have access to from our components. So I'm going to click on our item component again, and I'm going to add an Angular directive. You can add any regular Angular directive. You can add custom directives if you include any. But for right now, I'm just going to go ahead and add an ng-repeat. And we are going to do for item in items. And now this items right here is directly linked to scope.items over here. And we're just going to iterate through that and call it item. So now if we preview, you'll see 2 of them with no data. Now, the thing we can do is we can use template tags anywhere you can include text. So for the content, we're going to use template tag item.title. Now, when you're previewing, we're going to show you those template tags so you know exactly where that data is coming from. However, when you go to the actual preview mode, now we see testing item 1 and testing item 2, which is awesome. Okay, so we automatically have these 2 things repeat from real data from our controller. Now, let's say we want to throw the current ones on the left-hand side here, and then finished items, we only want the finished ones over there. So what we're going to do is we are going to take that icon list item again. Again, we will remove the header margin. We will select the list over here, make it full width. Okay, select this thing here. And for this one, we're going to want a check, but this one we will do an actual check in a box. And we'll add that same kind of directive, ng-repeat, okay, for item in items. And we are going to leave that. Now, here we've already encountered an issue, and we're going to solve it in the next phase. So we have scope.items in our to-dos, right? Our finished items does not have access to that scope. So even though I did ng-repeat item in items on these finished items, when you preview it, we're going to get nothing because that scope isn't there. So in the next phase, we are going to work on making this into a service so we can have both sides of our tabs access the same data. All right, guys, let's move on to phase 2. So during this phase, I want to take what we just did and kind of move the items into a service so we can access them from multiple pages, as well as take this thing and give these items each their own individual pages where we can mark them as done or uncompleted. So let's start off by going to our built-in Services.js down here. Now, this is real simple. We just leave this here for you guys in case you want to easily add some services that we already include. If you wanted to make your own new service for this, you could just hit add. We could name this todos.js. And now you can see here that we have angular.module my module. So let's name this todos. Okay, now it's important though that we rename this, so we just did, and add the module to the Angular modules above. So that's this button right here. So we click Angular modules, and we are going to add to-dos. I suppose I should change this to lowercase just to make sure we leave everything safe like that. And so now, once we save this, that will automatically be included in our app.js file that gets exported. So now let's add a service here. So we already kind of comment one out for you. So let's uncomment that. Let's call this to-dos, right? And this here is going to be a boilerplate for us to get this service into our pages. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to create something local. So var items equals, and we are actually going to take this from our page controller and copy it right into here. So there. Now we already have our 2 items built in here, and we are going to do var to-dos equals items, and we're going to set that items to that, and then we're going to wind up returning that object. Okay, so what this does is it's going to set up a service. This is an internal variable. Here we are going to set items equal to this internal variable we set up here, and then we're going to return that. So what we can do now is save our service. We can go over to to-dos here, include our to-dos service, and now we can set scope.items into todos.items. So what that is going to do is if we look at our to-dos page here, we are going to have an item for each thing from our to-dos service instead of from our to-dos controller. So if I preview this, you'll see we have testing item 1, testing item 2, both from our to-dos service. So now the reason we did this is now we can go to finishing items, or finished items. We can do to-dos and set scope.items equals to-dos.items. Save that controller. And what we do now is in finished items here, you see how we had that ng repeat item in items, which changed this content to item.title. And as we preview, you can see we get these same two items in our finished items. So they're in both pages. Now, obviously, we don't want both of these in both places, as one we have marked finished and the other we do not. So what we're going to do is we're going to add another directive to this list item, ng show, for if item.finished equals true. Okay, we're going to preview that, and now we should only see the one that is actually finished. So let's go back to our to-dos unfinished page and also add an ng show here for if item.finished equals false. Now as we preview that change, you can see now item 1 is in our to-do list and item 2 is in our finished items. And as we switch between those two tabs, we can see we maintain that. Now, obviously we want people to be able to complete items. And another feature of coding that I want to show off to you guys is our brand new route parameters. So what we're going to do here is we are going to add a page, just a blank page, and we are going to call this page item, and we'll just name it to do item here. And then what we're going to do is we are going to say that this page has a route parameter. So this parameter we're just going to call item. Okay. And now what happens is when I go over to to-dos, oh, and you know what? We're going to need to give these a fake ID since we're not connected to any database yet. I just want to make sure that this has an ID of 1. This has an ID of 2. We're going to save that. And now we are going to do link. Okay, so we're in our to-dos page. Here's our item, right? And we're going to link it up to the to-do item page. And it immediately knows, look, I need this item parameter. So we can use a direct value here or a template string. So right now I'm going to do item.$ID, just because that's what Firebase uses, and we'll be integrating that later. And then I am going to go to finished items and also link this up to to-do item. Item.id. Okay, and now what happens is when I preview this and we click on this one, you can see we go to a to-do item. Now we didn't put any information in here yet, and that's because we haven't accessed the variable. So we're going to go to our to-do item, and as you can see, we default include state parameters here. So what this means is we are now going to have scope.itemID equal to stateparams.item. So that .item right here directly links to the item route parameter that we're passing through for each of those buttons. So now since we're not hooked up to Firebase and we don't want to do anything crazy yet, we are just going to throw a paragraph in here and have this paragraph say item ID. Okay, and we will preview that. Oh, and check this out. So if you preview something that needs a page parameter and you haven't passed one because there's no navigation, it's going to ask you to put one in. So right now let's just do 3, save params. And now you can see we are going to not get that 3 because I did not save our controller. So now that we saved our controller, preview, it's going to remember that 3 we typed in, save params. And now we'll get the 3 there. So now the cool part is if I go over to to-dos and preview our to-dos page, this was test item 1. We click it, we get a 1. We go to our finished items, test item 2, we click it, we get a 2. So that ID has been dynamically passed through the list item, through state params, and into this new controller. Now, in order for us to get functionality like adding and removing these or completing them and uncompleting them, things like that, we're going to rig up Firebase so we can get this back by some real-time data and also give us some lookup functions so we can actually turn this item ID into a real item from Firebase that we can then edit. That's all in the next phase. All right, everybody, it is time for phase 3, which means integrating Firebase directly into your to-do app and getting that to-do service we made hooked up to Firebase with a list synced directly to their database. So the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to actually set up Firebase in our app. So to do that, we are going to go to firebase.google.com. We're going to go over to the docs site here, libraries, and Angular Fire. You are going to click that little link, and it is going to bring up their Angular Fire GitHub, which is where all their documentation is located. Now, if we go down to getting started, you're going to see some instructions on how to download Angular Fire. So the first thing we need is Angular. Obviously, Creator already includes Angular, but we do need Firebase and Angular Fire. So we are going to copy these two URLs they give us. Going to go over to Creator and open up the external JS pop-up down here. Okay, we're going to pop in that Firebase.js. We're going to come back over here and grab Angular Fire. Copy that over to external as well. Pop that in there. Personally, I like moving these all the way to the top of the list just so we can kind of maintain an order in our export here. All right, so we've got Firebase, we've got Angular Fire, we've got the stuff we already created here. Now let's look at the next instruction here. We can go over to their quick start. Okay, and the first thing we need to do here, I'm actually going to jump to step 4 and then we'll do step 3. So step 4 is include the Firebase module in your app here. So what we're going to want to do is go here, go to Angular modules, include Firebase. And then the other thing we're going to want to do is Firebase is now included in our main module, which is that app, okay? But because we didn't include app.dot in our to-do service, we're also going to want to put Firebase here. So now we have access to that Firebase service in both locations. Now, we also need to initialize the Firebase SDK. Now, you can see, it wants all these variables and things like that. So if we go back to firebase.google.com, you can go to your own console here. And I've already created an app for this. All right, so I've got this testing to do app. And we can see here. Let's see is it gonna allow us to pull this up here? Project settings. Gonna look around. Sorry, I did this once. I'm not quite sure where the actual link is. Okay, project settings. You can do add Firebase to your web app. And it is going to give you this section of code. So now what we're going to do is we are going to copy this code right here, this initialize Firebase. Okay, we're going to go back to Creator. What we're going to do in our Firebase service here is we're going to do a .run. Okay, and this .run is a function that runs immediately when our app is set up. So this would be a good place for us to get this config in here, so that it runs when our app is started. We do Firebase.initialize with all of our settings, and it works splendidly. So now, since we're going to be working in code a little bit, let me make this a little bit bigger. Now, the first thing we're going to want to do is get this service actually backed by Firebase. So we are going to comment out our var items dummy data that we included, and we're going to start out here by taking this and inserting our Firebase array. And then we are going to do var ref equals firebase.database.ref.child to-dos. So what this is doing is it's taking our main database location and looking for a child called to-dos and creating a reference to that. Now, that isn't actually synced or anything like that, so we're going to want to do var items equals Firebase array that ref. Now this Firebase array is what is going to give us a real-time array synced directly to Firebase. So We have item set to items again. We're going to redo that to do. We are going to hit save. And if I rigged everything up correctly, this means we should start seeing some real data. All right, so there we go. It took a second, but we loaded our data from Firebase, add a new item here, testing, some finished items. We have 4 different finished items that were already populated in this database. Okay, so that's step 1. We populated some stuff from our actual database. We can remove that dummy data. Now we need to add 2 different functions to this to-do service as well. We're going to want to add item. We're going to want to pass that a title. And we're going to want to set finished. It's going to accept a new value here. This one's super easy. So we're just going to take item.finished equals the new value. And we're going to do items.save item. And so what this is doing is we're going to pass an actual Firebase object to this set finished. And it's going to say items, this synced Firebase thing, dot save, that actual item we passed to it. And all we did was change the value finished. Now for adding an item, we're going to do something a little bit similar. We're going to do items.$add. And for that, we're going to do title is the title we passed to it. And we're going to do finished is false. So everything is going to start as false there. Okay, boom. All right, so that looks good to me. Now our service should be rigged up to Firebase, should be able to add and remove things, but we don't have any UI for that yet. So let's first of all create a modal inside of our regular to-dos to add a new item. Now, the cool thing, now that we have full JavaScript support, is that you can go straight to our Ionic Framework docs and start using some of our JavaScript stuff that might not be included directly in Creator yet, like modals. So I'm going to copy over some code here from something I already wrote. This is literally almost taken exactly from our documentation. Okay, and we are going to want to do scope.data equals title. This is just a little function to hold a temporary title for something. All right, so let's run through this. This was taken directly from our documentation. So we do Ionic modal. Now, I didn't include that yet. So let's include Ionic modal just so this doesn't blow up. From template, and we have a string template. We just have a header. It's got a close button, add a to-do. We've got some content. It's got an input with a button calling add item. Okay. Show modal, just going to show that modal that we just made up here. Close modal will set the title back to empty. And add item is going to do to-dos.add item, that temporary title, and then close the modal. Okay. Now that's all fine and dandy, but we still don't have any UI to actually add this in. So let's throw up a button. And let's make this button look good. So let's take this here, and I want to change that style. We're going to do full width. I want to do an outline style. I want to make it green. And we are going to have it say add item. And then down here in that Angular Directive sections, we are going to do ng-click equals show modal, that function that we had to actually open this modal we created in our code. So let's cross our fingers, preview this. Okay. We've got our 2 items. We've got our add item dialog. Okay. Now we are going to do a new item that says new demo item. We're going to hit submit. And that new demo item is showed up and synced directly from Firebase. We could also hit close. That would have cleared out any data that we had put in here. Now that new demo item is now going to be persistent since it's put in Firebase. So if we go back to build and then we go back to preview, okay, that new demo item is still there. Now we want to make it so we got our Firebase ID here. We want to make this Firebase ID actually pull in the title of that to-do item that we clicked. So we are going to go to our to-do item thing here. Okay, and here is where we were going to want to use this item ID to actually get something from Firebase. So we're going to do scope.item equal to-dos.items. Now here it's going to get a little weird. To-dos.items.index for stateparams.item. Okay, so that's literally giving us the actual Firebase object for that ID. Okay. So let's take that, hit save, and then in that item here, instead of item ID, we now want to change this to say item.title. So now when we go to our to-dos page, we preview that, and we click on that new demo item we created, we will not get anything because we didn't actually, what did we do wrong here? Oh, we didn't include to-dos in our to-do item. Important because we're referencing it here. So now we will go preview this. Wait for them to load, new demo item, and we get new demo item. So now there's a reference to that actual Firebase object straight inside of this controller. So we want to utilize our toggle finished is a function. Okay, and there we're going to do if scope.item.finished. We're going to want to do todos.setFinished, scope.item to false. Otherwise, we are going to take todos.setFinished, scope.item is set to true. So now we're just going to create all this thing did was toggle it from true or false, depending on whether or not the item is true or false. So what we're going to want to do here is have two different buttons, actually. So let's just drag two over all at once. Okay, and one of these buttons is going to be to say, I completed this, yay! Okay, and this one, let's see here, we can give this theme balanced, right? Okay, let's maybe give it an icon, thumbs up, put it on the left there, and then this button, we are going to do sad day, this actually isn't done. Okay, and that one, let's do Ion sad, put it on the left again, and this one we will make red. Okay, that's great. So now we've got these two buttons, but the thing is they don't actually do anything yet. So we're going to want to add two directives to each of these. ng-click is going to be toggle finished. Then we're also going to want ng-show for this one is item.finished equals false. On this one, we will add those same directives. ng-click is toggle finished. And ng-show is going to be item.finished equals true. All right, so hopefully we see only one of these buttons depending on what item we have here. Okay, so add a new item here. We only see I completed this because we are in the uncompleted page. Finished items. We only see the sad day. This actually isn't done. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go to to-dos, do new demo item. I completed this, yay. The button immediately changed because we updated that variable in Firebase. And we're going to go over here. New demo item is now in the finish items list. Sad day, this actually isn't done. And that new demo item is back in the regular list. So all that's accomplished with this simple to-do service that we backed by Firebase. All we did was get that list, set it up as a Firebase array, include it in items, have that add item function, and then update the object however we want. In this case, we just set it to finished. You could, for instance, here add a note to your to-do items, or even multiple notes. But here we just set finished equal to true or false and save it back to your thing. So our full app is now a working to-do list where you can add items, remove items. It uses our route parameters feature. It's all fully synced to Firebase. We even have JavaScript modals going on with some very nice purple styles coming from our theme support. So all that we ran through in a little less than 20 minutes here. I hope you guys enjoy the new coding feature. Please let us know if you have any questions and share whatever you guys make in the comment section below. I will catch you guys later. This tutorial showed you how to use everything in custom code support, but it just brushes the surface of what is really possible. Feel free to share what you've made in the comments. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys next time.